The year is 1888. The merchant clipper, the Memory, is found adrift in the North Atlantic. Not a wreck, not a ghost ship. Her sails are furled, her hull intact. Every man aboard is alive, healthy, and accounted for. Yet what the search party discovered was far more chilling than any ghost or storm-ravaged hull. The entire crew, from the grizzled captain to the greenest deckhand, could not recall the last 72 hours. 3 full days of their lives, and the ship's official log were utterly, terrifyingly blank. They had sailed through a void and woke with no memory of where they had been, or what unthinkable events might have transpired in the silence of their own minds. The discovery was made by the British warship HMS Vigilant on a routine patrol of the North Atlantic shipping lanes in the late summer of 1888. A distant glint on the horizon, too large to be flotsam, too still to be under sail. As the Vigilant closed the distance, her crew strained to identify the vessel. It was the merchant clipper, the Memory, a familiar sight, known for its swift passages between the Americas and Europe. But something was profoundly wrong. The Vigilant's captain, Commander Thomas Sterling, a man whose face was as weathered as an old chart, noted the eerie stillness that clung to the clipper like a shroud. No distress signal flew from her mast. No damage marred her sturdy oak hull, no splintered wood, no torn rigging. Her sails, neatly furled, hung like slumbering giants, as if she had been anchored in a perpetual calm, defying the very currents that should have carried her. Yet, the Memory drifted, a silent derelict, hundreds of miles off her intended course to the bustling docks of Liverpool. Her compass a dead, useless needle pointing nowhere, utterly divorced from magnetic north. A boarding party was swiftly dispatched, their apprehension growing with every stroke of the oars. What they found aboard was not a scene of carnage, nor starvation, nor disease. Every soul on board, 28 men, from the grizzled Captain Alistair Finch to the greenest deckhand, was accounted for. All were alive, all were physically sound. Not a bruise, not a scratch, no sign of struggle, no fever, no illness. They were, by all outward appearances, perfectly healthy, but their eyes held a terror deeper than any storm could inflict, a profound, bewildered emptiness that spoke of a horror beyond physical pain. They moved like men waking from a nightmare they could not recall, or worse, a nightmare that had never ended, leaving them stranded in a waking oblivion. Commander Sterling's initial relief evaporated as he began to question Captain Finch. The answers, or chilling lack thereof, were delivered in a voice strained by an invisible, crushing weight. We do not know, sir," Finch rasped, his eyes darting across the familiar cabin as if seeing it for the first time. A stranger in his own command. "It is gone, the time, all of it. 3 days. Lost." Every man echoed the same impossible truth. 3 days, 72 hours, a complete, collective blackout. They could not recount the last watch they stood, the last meal shared in the galley, the last command given or received. Who had furled the sails with such precision? Why was the ship so wildly off course, adrift in open ocean? No one knew. Each man's memory of that critical period was a terrifying void, a black hole in their own minds, a segment of their very existence utterly erased. The most damning, most concrete evidence of this impossible gap in reality lay in the captain's cabin, on his chart table, the ship's log. This meticulous ledger, mandated by Admiralty law, was the undisputed chronicle of every voyage, every bearing, every squall, every significant event, down to the smallest detail of daily life at sea. For the past 3 days, it was a blank, not a single entry, not a line. Just empty, accusing paper, a terrifying testament to a period of existence that simply did not happen in the written record, or more horrifyingly, in the conscious minds of those who lived it. This was not merely lost time. This was a fundamental breach of reality, a violation of the very linearity of existence, a vessel navigating without conscious command, its crew living through events they could not register, a void where their immediate past should have been. Imagine the profound, soul-shattering horror. A captain whose life and the lives of his men depend on his judgment and the absolute reliability of his crew. suddenly finds every single one of them, including himself, to be an unreliable witness to the most critical hours of their voyage. What truly transpired during those missing days? Did they encounter something unspeakable? Something that burned itself from their minds? Did they fight a phantom assailant? Were they boarded by an unseen, ethereal force that left no trace but amnesia? Did they sail through a dimension no human mind could comprehend? A pocket of non-existence? The chilling truth was, they would never know. This profound shared amnesia, later speculated as a form of geomagnetic amnesia, defied every known law of the sea and of the mind. It was a terrifying blank canvas upon which the imagination paints only dread, a mystery that shatters the very concept of human memory and leaves only unanswerable questions. If the chilling void within the memory's log and the minds of her crew grips you, if you seek to unravel such profound maritime enigmas, then I invite you to join this investigation. Press the like button to signal your engagement with these deep-sea secrets, and subscribe to ensure you don't miss a single clue as we navigate the uncharted waters of forgotten history. The case of the memory sent tremors through the Admiralty, not for its physical damage, there was none, but for its utter, baffling psychological impact. The official reports, initially filed as unexplained dereliction and crew disorientation, quickly morphed into something far more esoteric. Naval physicians and nascent psychologists were baffled. No known malady could induce such a precise, collective, and time-bound amnesia without accompanying physical trauma or neurological damage. The crew, medically examined for weeks, showed no signs of injury, illness, or even significant stress, beyond the terror of their own mental void. It was a young, unconventional naval cartographer, Dr. Elias Thorne, whose radical theories, initially dismissed as fringe speculation, began to gain reluctant traction. Thorne, a man obsessed with the subtle, often ignored fluctuations of the Earth's magnetic field, proposed the existence of what he termed zones of forgetfulness. These were not mere Bermuda Triangles, swallowing ships whole, but insidious, invisible anomalies, specific rare sea regions where extreme, unstable geomagnetic forces were suspected of warping not just compasses and navigational instruments, but consciousness itself. Thorne's hypothesis was based on scattered anecdotal reports from mariners over centuries, whispers of ships that emerged from particular fog banks or calm patches of ocean, with crews reporting profound disorientation, a sense of having lost time, or an inability to recall the immediate past. These were often dismissed as fever dreams, bad rum, or the psychological toll of long voyages. But Thorne, with access to obscure Admiralty archives, noticed a pattern. Many of these incidents occurred in areas where geological surveys indicated unusual magnetic anomalies, deep-sea volcanic activity, or highly concentrated mineral deposits known to create localized magnetic disturbances. His theory posited that while the Earth's magnetic field is generally stable, certain localized areas could experience intense, rapid fluctuations, or even temporary, highly focused magnetic storms beneath the surface. These weren't powerful enough to tear ships apart, but perhaps, Thorne theorized, they produced low-frequency electromagnetic fields, or even infrasound, that interacted with the delicate electrical impulses of the human brain. The brain, a complex bioelectrical organ, relies on precise electrical signaling for everything, especially the formation and retrieval of short-term memories. Disrupt these signals, and memory itself could be fractured. The idea was revolutionary, almost heretical. For centuries, the sea was understood as a realm of physical dangers: storms, reefs, monsters, pirates. Thorne suggested an invisible, intangible threat, one that attacked the very core of human identity: memory. He argued that the memory had likely drifted into one such zone, a pocket of oceanic space-time where the very fabric of neurological function was briefly, profoundly compromised. The ship's compass, found spinning uselessly, was the physical manifestation of this unseen force. The blank log and the void in the crew's minds were the chilling human consequence. The zone of forgetfulness was not a place of violent death, but of subtle, terrifying erasure. It removed not the ship, but the experience of the ship's journey. leaving behind only the vessel and the men, haunted by the knowledge of what they had lost and the terrifying uncertainty of what they had done during their unremembered hours. The notion that the ocean could possess areas capable of inducing such a specific, shared amnesia without a single physical mark elevated the case of the memory from a mere maritime incident to a profound, unsettling scientific and philosophical mystery. It opened a new, chilling chapter in the chronicling of the deep, the ocean as a landscape not just of physical peril, but of cognitive assault. To understand the chilling descent into amnesia, we must consult the final, coherent entries of the memory's logbook. Captain Finch, a man of meticulous habits, had maintained his records with unwavering discipline for decades. His final entries, however, reveal a subtle, insidious unraveling, a creeping unease that predated the total void. Entry, August 14, 1888, latitude 42 degree N, longitude 35 W, 1400 hours, wind holding steady, course true, all well aboard. Though I note a peculiar absence of seabirds this past day, unnerving given our position, the air feels heavy. Not with foul weather, but with a peculiar stillness, like the sea holds its breath. A seemingly innocuous observation, yet it hints at the subtle shift in the natural environment. The absence of birds, often a first warning sign of atmospheric anomaly or deep-sea disturbance, was noted by a captain attuned to the ocean's whispers. Entry, August 14, 1888, 2000 hours. Compass behaving erratically, needle twitching, refusing to settle. Have checked and rechecked deviation. No apparent cause. Magnetic north seems restless. My first mate, Peterson, reports similar anomalies with his handheld. Odd. No known magnetic shoals here. Sky clear. This entry marks a critical escalation. A compass, the very heart of navigation, refusing to obey the Earth's magnetic pull. For a seasoned mariner like Finch, this would have been deeply unsettling. It's the first concrete sign of the geomagnetic anomaly that Dr. Thorne would later theorize. The restless magnetic north, a chilling precursor to total disorientation. Entry, August 15th, 1888, 0600 hours. The hum. It began sometime in the night, a low, pervasive vibration, felt more than heard, through the timbers, up through the soles of my boots, a resonant thrum that seems to emanate from the very depths. The crew is agitated. Some complain of a dull ache behind the eyes. Peterson reports a fuzziness in his thoughts. I myself feel dislocated, a profound sense of unreality, as if we sail through a dream. This is the most disturbing entry. The hum, a classic symptom reported in various unexplained maritime phenomena, often linked to infrasound, frequencies too low for the human ear to consciously detect, but capable of causing a range of physiological and psychological effects, from anxiety and disorientation to nausea and, crucially, a sense of dread or presence. Finch's description of fuzziness and dislocation, the feeling of sailing through a dream, points directly to the cognitive disruption that would soon overwhelm them. It's the sensation of reality itself losing its grip. Final coherent entry, August 15th, 1888, 1200 hours. The hum intensifies. It's in my bones now. The very light seems wrong, distorted. The men are quiet, too quiet. Their eyes, I see the same confusion in them that I feel within myself. We speak, but the words, they seem to catch, slipping. I am writing this, but my hand feels disconnected. What is happening? We are adrift, not by currents, but by something else. Something unseen. The world, it is blurring. I must focus. We are. And there, the entries cease, abruptly. The final words trail off, incomplete. A desperate struggle against a cognitive fog that was rapidly consuming Captain Finch's mind. The ink, though fresh, seems to tremble on the page, mirroring the captain's losing battle against the encroaching void. After this, only blank pages, a silent testament to the 72 hours that simply vanished. It is a chilling descent into an unknown phenomenon, captured in the agonizingly precise hand of a man losing his grip on reality itself. The logbook doesn't just record a mystery, it becomes the mystery, a physical manifestation of the erased time, leaving us to wonder what happened during those missing days when the memory sailed on, without a conscious soul at the helm. The case of the memory was unsettling in its specific collective amnesia, but it was not entirely without precedent. Doctor, Elias Thorne's delve into historical maritime archives unearthed a scattering of lesser-known accounts, often dismissed as folklore or the ravings of madmen, that echoed the chilling phenomena observed aboard Captain Finch's clipper. These were not the grand, dramatic disappearances of entire ships, but more insidious psychological assaults, temporary mental blank slates, collective disorientation, and a profound sense of temporal dislocation. One such account hailed from the early 19th century, concerning a whaler, the Sea Serpent, operating in the remote storm-lashed waters off the Kerguelen Islands in the southern Indian Ocean. The ship returned to port months overdue, her crew visibly shaken. Their captain, a stoic Scot named MacGregor, a shadow of his former self. His log, though mostly complete, contained a curious lacuna. For a period of nearly 48 hours, the entries became disjointed, nonsensical, filled with repeated phrases and sketches of impossible, swirling patterns. When pressed, MacGregor could only recall a profound, crushing silence, a thickening of the air, and a pervasive sense of being unmoored from time. His crew reported waking from what felt like a deep, unnatural sleep, finding the ship sailing under bare poles, far from their last known position, with no memory of setting or furling the sails. Their compasses, too, had been wildly inaccurate during the preceding days, a detail dismissed at the time as simple malfunction. Further back in the mid-18th century, a Dutch East India man, the Gouden Leeuw, Golden Lion, on a voyage across the Pacific, reportedly encountered a zone of stupor near the Solomon Islands. According to a surviving, though highly embellished, personal journal of a ship's surgeon, the entire crew, including the officers, fell into a state of profound apathy and confusion for an unknown duration. They moved like automatons, performing basic tasks without conscious thought or memory. The surgeon himself described vivid, yet ultimately unrecallable dreams that filled the void of his waking hours. When the effect lifted, they were hours, perhaps days, off course, with no explanation. The surgeon noted the unusual, almost electrical feel to the air, and the persistent, low thrumming that preceded the onset of their collective mental fog. These were the hallmarks of the hum that Captain Finch would record a century later. Even older, from the 17th century, a Spanish galleon, the Santa Maria de la Concepcion, sailing through a notoriously unpredictable stretch of the Caribbean, reported a bizarre incident in its official manifest. The pilot noted a sudden, complete loss of all navigational bearings. Not just the compass, but the sun's position, the stars at night, even the direction of the prevailing currents seemed to shift and blur. For a period, the crew became lost within themselves, unable to maintain a coherent sense of direction or even purpose. They would start a task, then forget its objective mid-action. This was not mutiny or illness, but a pervasive, shared mental disarray. The log notes a terrifying moment when the captain himself, a seasoned veteran, could not recall the names of his senior officers. When the phenomenon passed, they found themselves drifting dangerously close to an uncharted reef, a peril they had no memory of avoiding. What binds these disparate accounts, separated by centuries and vast oceans, is the chilling thread of cognitive disruption. Not just physical loss or traditional navigation failure, but a profound, temporary erasure of memory, a shared disassociation from reality, and an inexplicable temporal lacuna. These were not the stuff of sea monsters or phantom ships, but something more subtle, more terrifyingly internal. The common elements: atmospheric stillness, compass malfunction, a pervasive hum or vibration, and then the terrifying blank. These historical echoes, though often buried in obscure records or dismissed as mere superstition, lent a chilling credence to Dr. Thorne's radical theory. They suggested that the memory was not an isolated incident, but rather the most perfectly documented and profoundly unsettling example of a phenomenon the oceans had been subtly inflicting upon humanity for centuries. Zones where the very mind could become adrift. Dr. Elias Thorne's theory of geomagnetic amnesia moved beyond mere anecdotal evidence and into the realm of speculative science. He argued that the Earth's magnetic field, though invisible, is a powerful and dynamic force, constantly interacting with every living thing. While its general influence is benign, Thorne proposed that certain localized anomalies, intense fluctuating magnetic fields caused by deep-sea geological activity, vast mineral deposits, or even unusual oceanic currents, could create conditions profoundly detrimental to human cognition. The human brain is, at its core, an electrochemical marvel. Neurons communicate through electrical impulses, and these impulses generate their own subtle electromagnetic fields. Thorne posited that powerful, low-frequency electromagnetic ELF fields, emanating from these anomalous zones, could directly interfere with these delicate neural processes. Imagine a radio signal being jammed. Thorne suggested a similar interference, but with the brain's internal communication network. Specifically, he focused on the hippocampus, a critical region of the brain responsible for the formation of new memories and the consolidation of short-term memories into long-term ones. Research, even in Thorne's nascent era, was beginning to understand that disruption to this area could lead to anterograde amnesia, the inability to form new memories after the onset of the condition. If a ship sailed into such a zone, the constant pervasive LF fields could in essence jam the hippocampus, preventing new experiences from being properly encoded. The crew would be physically present performing actions, but their brains would not be recording these events in a retrievable format. The result? A terrifying blank. They were living, but not remembering. Furthermore, Thorne incorporated the concept of infrasound. This is sound at frequencies below the human hearing threshold, often generated by natural phenomena like ocean waves, volcanic activity, or even large storms. While unheard, infrasound can be felt, and its effects on the human body are well documented, ranging from fatigue and disorientation to anxiety, nausea, and a profound sense of unease or presence. Some studies, even in modern times, suggest links between infrasound exposure and altered states of consciousness, including mild hallucinations or a feeling of being watched. If these geomagnetic anomalies also generated intense infrasound, it could amplify the cognitive disruption, leading to the hum Captain Finch described, and further impairing the brain's ability to process and store information coherently. The combination of direct electromagnetic interference with neural pathways and the disorienting, anxiety-inducing effects of infrasound, Thorne argued, could create a perfect storm for collective amnesia. The crew of the Memory wasn't unconscious or physically incapacitated. They were merely operating under a profound, induced cognitive fog. Their brains, unable to record new data, simply allowed the experience to pass unremarked, like water through a sieve. When they sailed out of the anomalous zone, the jamming ceased, but the days spent within its influence were already lost, unrecorded, unretrievable. The terrifying implication was that the ocean itself, through its hidden geological forces, could temporarily erase human consciousness, turning sentient beings into unwitting automatons. It was a chilling thought that the vast deep blue could not only swallow ships whole, but also devour the very memories of those who dared to cross its most enigmatic thresholds. The scientific explanations, while offering a tantalizing glimpse into the mechanics of geomagnetic amnesia, raised a chilling paradox. If the phenomenon was merely a consequence of magnetic fields and infrasound, a temporary, albeit profound, neurological hiccup, why was there no physical harm, no seizures, no lasting brain damage, no physiological markers of such intense cerebral disruption? The crew of the Memory emerged healthy, if profoundly disturbed by their mental void. Their bodies had endured the passage, even furled the sails, yet their minds retained no conscious echo. This absence of physical consequence, alongside such a complete mental erasure, complicated the neat scientific hypothesis. It begged the question, was it merely a magnetic effect, or was something else, something more insidious, at play? The very precision of the amnesia, a specific 72-hour blank, seemed almost too perfect for a random environmental anomaly. If it were purely a magnetic storm, wouldn't the effects be more variable, perhaps causing temporary confusion, but rarely such a total, shared, and time-bound loss of memory? This led to more speculative, even unsettling theories. Could these zones represent localized temporal distortions? Not a full-blown time warp, but rather a subtle bending of reality, where sensory input simply fails to register or record in the human mind for a period? Imagine a recording device that, for a specific duration, simply stops capturing data, yet the events it was meant to record still happen. The ship sails, the wind blows, the waves crash, but the human brain within this pocket of altered reality is simply incapable of creating a conscious memory of it. It's as if they passed through a null zone of consciousness, a segment of existence where experience ceased to be convertible into memory. Another chilling possibility emerged: a unique atmospheric or oceanic composition. Perhaps these zones contained an unknown gas, a peculiar aerosol, or even microscopic biological agents triggered by specific environmental conditions, something airborne, inhaled, or absorbed that acted as a potent transient neurotoxin, specifically targeting memory consolidation without causing other overt physical symptoms. The ocean, after all, is a vast, unexplored chemical laboratory. What unknown compounds might be released from deep-sea vents or from unusual algal blooms under specific geomagnetic conditions? This would explain the lack of physical harm. The toxin dissipates, the brain recovers its function, but the period of exposure remains unrecorded. Then there was the unsettling psychological dimension, the profound stillness Captain Finch noted, the absence of seabirds, the pervasive hum. These elements could contribute to an atmosphere of extreme isolation and sensory deprivation, a fertile ground for psychological fragility. Could the amnesia be a form of collective dissociative fugue, triggered by an overwhelming, unidentifiable stressor that the mind simply chose to erase as a protective mechanism? A shared mass psychological break from an unbearable, perhaps even terrifying, reality they could not otherwise process. If this were the case, what horrors did their unconscious minds witness that their waking selves refused to acknowledge? This explanation, while offering a psychological anchor, also deepened the mystery, suggesting an encounter so profound, so utterly alien, that the human psyche simply jettisoned it from conscious recall. The paradox of the healthy body and the blank mind remained. It was a stark, unsettling reminder that the ocean's mysteries were not always about what it took, ships, lives, but sometimes more profoundly about what it erased. The memory sailed on, a ghost ship of the mind, leaving behind not wreckage, but an echoing void, a terrifying testament to an unknown force capable of stealing the very essence of human experience. The greatest horror for the crew of the Memory was not the physical ordeal, for there was none, but the profound, insidious psychological toll of the missing days. Captain Alistair Finch, a man who had commanded his vessel through typhoons and navigated by the stars, found himself adrift in a sea of uncertainty within his own mind. He, the absolute authority, the unwavering pillar of his crew, could not account for 3 days of his command. His log was blank, his memory a void. This wasn't just inconvenient, it was an existential nightmare. Imagine the captain waking to find his ship off course, his sails furled, and no recollection of how these critical changes occurred. The terrifying question that would gnaw at his soul: what happened? What did I do? Did he, in his unremembered state, make a catastrophic error in judgment? Did he endanger his men, his ship, his very career, without a single conscious memory of it? The foundation of his identity as a capable, responsible mariner was shattered. He had to trust his crew, but how could he, when every single man, including himself, was an unreliable witness with a gaping hole in their shared experience? For the crewmen, the horror was equally pervasive. They were sailors, men of routine, of clear purpose. Now they were haunted by an unfillable gap. Had they fought each other? Had a mutiny been attempted, then forgotten? Had a stranger boarded and then vanished, leaving no trace but their collective amnesia? The very idea that they had lived through events, perhaps even critical, life-threatening ones, and had absolutely no conscious access to them, was soul-shattering. Every glance at a shipmate became an exercise in suspicion. What hidden actions had they performed in their mental fog? What dark deeds? What desperate struggles What unspeakable encounters might have transpired that their minds had simply jettisoned? The silence of those 3 days was louder than any storm, echoing with unanswerable questions. The absence of memory created a terrifying, self-inflicted paranoia. They knew they had been alive, moving, acting, yet they could not account for their own agency. This profound lack of self-knowledge was more crippling than any physical injury. A man might recover from a broken bone, but how does one heal from a broken past? The psychological trauma rippled through the crew. Some became withdrawn, haunted by unspoken dread. Others grew agitated, frustrated by the impenetrable wall in their minds. The bonds of trust that are so vital on a long voyage were subtly eroded, replaced by a pervasive, unspoken fear of the unknown actions of themselves and their shipmates. The ship itself became a monument to their lost time. Every rope, every deck plank, every furled sail was a silent accusation, a physical testament to actions they could not recall performing. The compass, frozen in its erratic spin, was a constant reminder of the moment their conscious navigation ceased. They were not merely off course physically, they were off course existentially, severed from a segment of their own timeline. The psychological burden of geomagnetic amnesia was therefore not just the loss of memory, but the terrifying, enduring uncertainty of what that lost time contained. It left them not with scars on their bodies, but with an unhealable wound in their very sense of self, forever adrift in the wake of an unremembered voyage. Beyond the nascent scientific theories of geomagnetic interference and infrasound, and the chilling psychological impact, the case of the memory gave rise to even more speculative, almost metaphysical interpretations. If the crew experienced no physical harm, and if simple neurobiological disruption seemed too neat an explanation for such a precise collective amnesia, could these zones of forgetfulness be something far more profound? Could they represent localized temporal distortions, unique pockets where the very fabric of space-time behaved anomalously? Imagine a subtle, temporary tear in the continuum, a brief skip in the cosmic reel. Within such a zone, sensory input might not merely be disrupted, but fundamentally fail to register or record in the human mind in a coherent, retrievable sequence. The ship and its occupants would still exist and move through space, but their conscious experience of that passage would be nullified like a corrupted data file. Events would happen, but they wouldn't be stored as memories. It's a terrifying thought that one could live through a segment of time, perform actions, interact with reality, yet have no conscious awareness or recall of it afterwards. Their existence in that period would be akin to a dream from which one wakes with only a vague, ungraspable impression, or a film played with the sound and picture deliberately desynchronized. This theory suggests a form of temporal opacity, where the mind, the very instrument of conscious perception, becomes blind to the passage of time itself. The ship sailing through such a zone would be like a needle passing through a blank space on a record. The music continues before and after, but for a brief, unsettling interval, there is only silence. The crew, in this view, wasn't suffering from a loss of memory in the conventional sense, but rather a failure of acquisition. Their brains simply weren't capable of processing the data of those 72 hours into a format that could later be recalled. The implications are staggering. If certain oceanic regions can induce such temporal opacity, what else might they conceal or reveal? Could other ships, reported lost without a trace, have merely entered a more extreme version of such a zone, becoming permanently erased from the collective consciousness and physical reality? Or conversely, could these zones be brief windows, allowing glimpses of realities or entities that the human mind, in its normal state, is simply not equipped to comprehend, leading to a protective, self-induced amnesia? This more speculative theory moves beyond the merely scientific and into the realm of the truly anomalous. It posits the ocean as a canvas, not just for physical forces, but for distortions in the very fabric of reality. The memory would then become less a victim of a magnetic storm and more a vessel that briefly traversed a landscape of non-existence, a terrifying pocket where the linear flow of time and consciousness was temporarily suspended. The crew's healthy bodies, returning from this blank canvas of experience, would then be living testaments to an encounter with something profoundly unsettling, a glimpse into the ocean's capacity to not only hide its secrets, but to erase the very memory of their uncovering. The enduring mystery of the memory isn't just a tale of lost time. It's a chilling demonstration of profound vulnerability. Here was a vessel, physically sound, navigating an ocean that was, by all accounts, calm. Its crew, alive and healthy. Yet fundamentally, for 3 days, the ship was adrift. Not by currents, not by lack of wind, but by the complete, shared absence of conscious command. Imagine the memory during those 72 hours. Her sails, perfectly furled, suggesting a deliberate action, yet no one remembered performing it. Who gave the order? Who climbed the rigging? Was it a ghostly crew, an echo of their future selves, or their unremembered selves, acting on instinct devoid of conscious thought? The ship's wheel, perhaps lashed to a course, or perhaps spinning freely as the vessel wallowed. No human hand remembered guiding it. The galley, perhaps meals prepared, eaten, yet no one recalled the taste, the conversation, the simple act of sustenance. This scenario paints a terrifying picture. A high-performance vessel designed for speed and purpose, rendered utterly purposeless by an unseen force that targeted only the minds of its crew. It was a ship sailing blind, its occupants living in a state of waking sleep, their bodies performing basic functions without the guiding light of awareness. The vulnerability this exposed was profound. A ship without conscious command is a ship at the mercy of every hidden reef, every sudden squall, every passing vessel. Had they encountered another ship, would they have responded? Had they seen a distress signal, would they have acted? The chilling answer, based on their amnesia, is likely no. They were present, yet absent. This isn't just a historical curiosity. It's a terrifying thought experiment. What if such zones of forgetfulness are more common than we know, and other vessels, perhaps those lost without a trace, merely sailed into a more permanent version of this phenomenon, a zone from which consciousness, and thus the ability to navigate or send distress, never returned? The ocean, in this context, becomes a vast, indifferent entity capable of not just destroying physical structures, but subtly, insidiously dismantling the very sentience of those who traverse it. The crew of the Memory was found in perfectly good order, their survival almost a greater mystery than their disappearance. They could have drifted into shipping lanes, collided with another vessel, or been caught in a storm, yet they emerged, physically unscathed, a testament to the ocean's capricious nature. Sometimes it takes, sometimes it merely erases. Their survival, however, only amplified the horror. They were living proof that one could exist, breathe, move, and yet be fundamentally gone from their own life for a terrifying duration. The Memory became a symbol not of shipwreck, but of the mind wreck, a vessel that had completed its voyage, but whose crew carried a permanent scar of lost time, a silent testament to an encounter that defied human comprehension. It underscores the profound realization that the ocean's depths and the forces within them can shatter not just hulls, but the very fabric of human consciousness, leaving behind only questions and the chilling echo of what was, but cannot be remembered. The chilling saga of the Memory and its unremembering crew forces us to connect the disparate threads of an impossible phenomenon. The pieces, though individually unsettling, begin to align, painting a picture of a unique maritime peril, geomagnetic amnesia. The primary suspect remains the Earth's hidden magnetic architecture. Dr. Elias Thorne's once radical theory now serves as the most robust framework. We understand that the ocean floor, particularly in areas of deep-sea volcanic activity, fault lines, or unusual mineral concentrations, can generate localized, highly unstable geomagnetic fields. These are not the gentle guiding fields our compasses typically rely upon. Instead, they are turbulent, roiling forces capable of producing powerful, low-frequency electromagnetic ELF waves. The human brain, an intricate network of electrical impulses, is exquisitely sensitive to such external influences. The hippocampus, the brain's critical memory forge, could be directly disrupted by these LF waves. Imagine a delicate clockwork mechanism assaulted by an invisible vibration. The gears continue to turn, but the time it records becomes scrambled or simply ceases to register. This explains the core paradox, the physical health of the crew. The anomaly wasn't a destructive force, but an erasing one. It didn't damage the brain. It temporarily blinded its ability to record new experiences, to convert the present into retrievable memory. Adding to this, the pervasive hum Captain Finch so desperately noted in his final log entries points to the insidious presence of infrasound. Generated by the very same geological forces that churn the magnetic field, these unheard frequencies can induce profound physiological and psychological effects. Disorientation, nausea, anxiety, and a profound sense of unreality are all documented responses. This infrasound wouldn't cause amnesia directly, but it would amplify the cognitive disruption caused by the electromagnetic fields, creating a perfect storm of mental fog. The crew wasn't merely forgetting. They were operating under a deep, induced dissociative state, their conscious minds unable to properly process or retain the sensory data of their environment. The isolation of the open ocean, the sheer vastness and indifference of the deep would have amplified these effects. Cut off from familiar stimuli, subjected to an unseen, unfeeling force that warped their very perception of reality, the mind, in a desperate act of self-preservation, may have simply jettisoned the unprocessable data. This wasn't a conscious choice, but an involuntary neurological defense mechanism against an experience too alien, too profoundly unsettling to integrate. Thus, the memory was not a victim of a single, dramatic event, but of a unique confluence of subtle, pervasive forces. Extreme geomagnetic flux, generating memory-scrambling LF waves, coupled with the disorienting, anxiety-inducing effects of infrasound, all occurring within the isolating, boundless expanse of the ocean. It was an environment that, for a terrifying 72 hours, turned living men into conscious automatons, their existence a blank canvas upon which only the unseen forces of the deep could paint. The ship sailed on, a silent testament to the ocean's capacity to not only hide its secrets, but to erase the very memory of their uncovering. The voyage of the memory stands as one of the most unsettling paradoxes in maritime history. A ship, physically whole, yet its crew, alive and healthy, returned from a terrifying journey through a void in their own minds. It forces us to confront an ocean, not just of physical peril, but of cognitive assault. We've explored the leading theories, the profound influence of anomalous geomagnetic fields, generating unseen electromagnetic waves capable of scrambling the brain's delicate memory formation. We've considered the insidious hum of infrasound, a silent, disorienting force that amplifies mental fog. And we've grappled with the chilling, more speculative possibility of temporal opacity, pockets where the very linearity of experience is momentarily suspended, leaving consciousness a terrifying blank. The memory did not sink. It sailed through an unknown dimension of the mind. Its crew survived, but they were forever haunted by a segment of their own lives that simply ceased to exist. They carried the burden of an unremembered voyage, a terrifying testament to an ocean capable of devouring not just hulls and lives, but the very essence of human experience. What other secrets does the deep hold? What other invisible forces, born from its crushing depths and ancient geology, can subtly, insidiously unravel the fabric of human perception? Can certain sea zones not only disrupt navigation, but shatter the very concept of consciousness and memory, leaving behind only healthy bodies and echoing voids? The case of the memory reminds us that beneath the waves, there are mysteries that challenge not just our maps, but our very understanding of reality itself. What are your thoughts on geomagnetic amnesia? Do you believe science holds the answer, or does the memory hint at something far more profound, something beyond our current comprehension? Share your theories in the comments below.